Look, I don't care how long you've been in this space, if you've been following XRP, this question has absolutely crossed your mind. It's kind of an uncomfortable one, right? Because you almost don't want to know the answer. But today, we're going to tackle it head on.
So let's just ask it, straight up. Are there any other cryptos out there that can actually do the specific job XRP was built for? To find a real answer, we've got to be super clear about what that job actually is. Okay, let's get into it.
Here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll define the real job that needs doing. Then we'll look at the pretty strict rules of the game. After that, we'll size up the contenders and put them in the right context, clear up some common confusion about who's not the competition, and finally, really pinpoint XRP's unique lane.
Okay, so to figure out who the competition is, we first have to get the job description right. And honestly, for a long time, a lot of us, myself included, have been using the wrong words to describe it.
And this brings us to a really crucial distinction. We often hear XRP called a settlement asset, but that's not quite it. See, settlement is the very end of the transaction. It's the moment the person on the other side gets their money. XRP isn't the end, it's the bridge in the middle. It is a conversion asset.
So understanding this role is everything. A conversion asset is this neutral tool that lets, say, Japanese yen become Philippine pesos almost instantly. And the key part, it means a bank doesn't have to keep a huge, expensive pile of pesos sitting around just in case. It's all about creating liquidity on demand.
But here is the real key. While we can call it a bridge asset or a conversion asset, the language that actually matters to the big players, the Bank of International Settlements, the regulators, is critical service provider. This completely reframes it. XRP isn't a currency trying to replace theirs, it's essential infrastructure. It's just a tool for the job.
And if you want to be called that kind of critical infrastructure, you can't just, show up and say hi. You have to play by a very, very strict set of rules. We're not in DeFi anymore. This is the most regulated industry on the entire planet.
Right. So any asset that wants this job has to meet some intense standards. First, the travel rule. You have to know exactly who is sending and who is receiving. Then there's DORA, the Digital Operational Resilience Act, which basically demands a system so solid it just cannot fail. And finally, it has to pass the critical third parties regime to prove it's trustworthy enough to even be a part of the core financial plumbing. These are not suggestions, they're non-negotiable.
Okay, so now we get it. We know the job and we know the rules. So, who else is actually in the running for this? This is where things get really interesting. The most important idea to wrap your head around here is context. The right tool for the job depends entirely on the specific type of transaction. There is no such thing as a one-size-fits-all conversion asset.
And this is where we see just how important that context is. For a totally neutral, fiat-to-fiat exchange where you're trying to avoid the US dollar, well, XRP is the choice. But hey, if both people trust and want to use the US dollar, then something like USDC on the Stellar network works perfectly. And if you're just in the on-chain DeFi world, an asset like Rune from Thorchain is built specifically for that context.
Let's really nail down this Stellar comparison, because it comes up all the time. MoneyGram, for example, uses the Stellar network. But are they using the XLM token as the conversion asset? Nope. Stellar provides the rails for USDC to act as the bridge. This is all about dollarized payments. XRP's whole purpose is for when you specifically want a non-dollar neutral bridge. See the difference?
So what about Rune? It's absolutely a conversion asset, no question. But contextually, it's for DeFi. Could it compete with XRP in the banking world? Well, maybe, theoretically, but it would have to go spend the next decade building relationships, going through lawsuits, and getting all the regulatory green lights. Ripple's already done all that hard work. They were literally built for two entirely different worlds.
So this brings us to another area that's just full of confusion. There are these other huge crypto projects that get mentioned in the same breath as XRP, but honestly, they're playing a completely different sport.
This is the core idea we have to get right. Think about it like this. Sending an email with instructions for a wire transfer is not the same thing as actually putting the cash in an envelope and sending it. Sending the information about a payment is not the same as moving the value.
Projects like Chainlink and Quant are absolutely critical, don't get me wrong. They're building the communication layer, kind of like the TCP/IP for this new financial system, letting all the private and public systems talk to each other. They are part of the messaging, but they are not the value that moves across the bridge. Their tokens, Link and QNT, they just aren't designed to be conversion assets. They're solving a different but equally important problem. So, after we've cleared away all the misconceptions and really understood the context, we can finally see the very specific, unique lane that XRP is driving in. This is it. This is the exact scenario. You've got a transaction between two fiat currencies, say Japan to Vietnam, and for whatever reason, cost, speed, politics, whatever, neither side wants to use the US dollar as the middleman. You need a neutral go-between. In that very specific, highly regulated context, XRP is the purpose-built tool for the job. And listen, this is not a theory, it's not a white paper, it is live, right now. SBI Remit in Japan is actively using XRP to send money to the Philippines, Vietnam, and Indonesia, and they've said it's explicitly to get rid of that pre-funding problem. Tranglo, a huge Ripple partner, has opened over 25 payment corridors using this exact model. It's happening as we speak. So, let's go all the way back to our first question. Is XRP the only crypto that can do its job? Well, the answer is a little nuanced. It is not the only conversion asset in existence, but it really does seem to be the only one specifically designed, regulated, and actually live in production for the job of neutral, non-dollar, cross-currency conversion inside the traditional financial system. Its real strength, its uniqueness, is in that very specific niche. So now I think we have a really high degree of confidence in what XRP's role is and why it's so uniquely positioned for it. And of course, that clarity naturally leads to the next much bigger question. If we know the what and we know the why, when does this all go mainstream? When does the whole system finally flip the switch? But that's a question for another day.